Shalom Abracha, my name is Shmuel Tenenebaum. I want to thank Rabbi Goodman from Yedidim organization, Epic Families, Epic Parenting. I had the opportunity to be able to be one of the presenters, one of the panelists, the last time Rabbi Goodman and his team came to Chicago and gave tremendous chizuk to our parents on parenting tips in year 2022. It was a chizuk for me to be part of the panel with such chashuva people, to get to know Rabbi Goodman. I consider it a schus, an honor and a privilege to be part of the Epic Families, the Epic Parenting panel. One of the questions that came up during the parenting panel made me think. And the question was, what is the biggest challenge children are faced with today, and how to deal with it? And as I was listening to the different Rabbanim who were answering on that panel, some were saying technology, some were saying fashion, some were saying they have everything available to them, entitlement, and it's all true. But I felt that these are all symptoms of a greater challenge. And the greater challenge is the lack of boundaries. Children feel entitled, even adults feel entitled many times, because they weren't taught the proper boundaries. What are boundaries? We know we're up to close to Shmuel's Har Sinai, the first pasuk that talks about boundaries. The pasuk tells us, "V'gbaltem es ha'am sovav leimar yisham lechem alois bahar v'nogea bikotzehu kol hanogea bahar mois yumas." You can't go onto the Har Sinai. That's one pasuk, Perik Yutes, pasuk Yud Beis, and then Perik Yutes, pasuk Chaf Aleph. Again, V'yom Hashem Moshe reid ha'eid ba'om pen yehersu el Hashem liros v'nofo menurav. And then there's a third pasuk about boundaries, where the pasuk tells us, pasuk Chaf Aleph, V'yom elav Hashem lech reid v'alisa atav Aaron imach v'kan v'am al yehersu la'alis el Hashem pen yifritz bam. We see by Matan Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu created a boundary, a very strong boundary that had to be repeated 3 times. Don't come close, because you may feel such a connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu, so much love at the time where Kadosh Baruch Hu is coming down and giving us the Torah, that we want to just become one. We want to run to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And yes, even when it comes to love, or maybe when it comes to love, that's when a tremendous amount of boundaries are needed to be put in place. Because if there aren't the proper boundaries, then enmeshment could happen. Entitlement, everything else could happen because the guidelines are not clear. So before Kabbalah Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu had to make that statement, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to go warn Klal Yisrael how clear we have to be, where yes, what we could do and what we cannot do. If there are proper boundaries, then the Torah can be kept. If the proper boundaries, then it'll be easier to understand and appreciate the Torah and its mitzvahs. The mitzvahs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us is to make sure that we don't fall into a pit that could have been prevented. And that prevention is proper boundaries. Epic Parenting, Epic Families is here to set the proper boundaries for parents, how to be mechanech our young children, the children that we love so much, the precious gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. For those that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us our own children, and for those that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave this chus to be mechanech others' children. Our job is to set proper boundaries and help the children understand with the chahava that every boundary that's in place, every mitzvah that's in place, is to keep them safe, is to keep us safe, to make sure that we're matzliach in life. Children do not come with an owner's manual. There are no detailed instructions of when to take an oil change, of when to check the tires, of when to. Yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah that if we are mechanech our children b'derech ha-mitzvahs, b'derech ha-yira, b'derech ha-Torah, then that is the guidebook for successful children. Yes, there are children that struggle and they need more interventions, and that the world of mental health is focused on that. But we're not dealing now with that nakuda. We're dealing with the mainstream child, especially the mainstream child that needs the proper boundaries, the proper education, the proper chinuch to know what's right and what's wrong. And when there's a mitzvah, to appreciate that the mitzvah is to make his life more successful, to make a longer lasting, healthier and happier being. Now, as parents, we know when our children are very young, we teach them at a very young age that fire is hot, water is dangerous, not to stay next to a pool, not to touch fire, and not to run into the street. Cars are dangerous. Some safety pieces we have no issue telling our children. When it comes to halachas, it's not difficult to teach a child that this is muktzah and we can't touch it on Shabbos. This is something which we don't do on Shabbos. We don't carry on Shabbos. We don't cook on Shabbos. Hilchos Shabbos is quite easy to teach our children. Yet when it comes to certain topics, it is very challenging for us to have these conversations with our kids. Sensitive topics, sensitive conversations, we don't always feel comfortable having with our children. And it's dafka these topics, these sensitive conversations, that the children need to hear from us parents so they can be matzliach. It's not something that may happen to the child. It's something that definitely will happen to the child. Every child goes through, every kid, every boy especially, girls as well, goes through adolescent changes. As they become an adult, they transition from being a child to becoming an adult. There are changes to their body. There are changes to their cognitive thinking, their cognitive thought process. There's changes to their emotional feelings, how they feel about things. Yet when it comes to these type of topics about adolescent development, we shy away from talking to our children. Many years ago, when we were working on our project called Big Talks, I had a meeting with the tells Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Chaim Levin. And we were discussing whether it's something that we should go into, should we work on it or not. And at the time he told me, there was never Messiah how to deal with these type of topics. But there isn't a greater time than now. Children today are living in a very large world. They're not living in a vacuum. The exposure is unbelievable. Even coming from what seems to be from places are topics and conversations that we would have never heard when we were growing up as children. So our kids are exposed to much more than we were exposed to. Our kids have feelings, and the more they're exposed to, their feelings are exposed as well. Yet they don't know how to make sense out of what they're feeling. They don't know how to make sense of what they're thinking. As the Telz Rishiva said, there was never Messiah, but now they need it. Go ahead and create a program that will be able to help the parents have these sensitive conversations with their children, that will help the mechanchim, the therapists, to have these sensitive conversations with their children. The goal of talking to our children is to prepare them for challenges. As we said, it's very easy to tell a kid, don't run into the street. We don't want chas v'shalom a challenge. But when it comes to the adolescent development challenges, it's a topic that's taboo. Yet every child goes through adolescence. And every child goes through the physical, the cognitive, the emotional changes. And if we prepare them beforehand, they would have a much easier time to deal with the changes and the nisyonos that come along with the changes. We tell Talmidim, life is full of nisyonos. Life is full of tests, challenges. If you're prepared for a test, usually you'll ace it. If we're not prepared for a test, it could be a very big challenge to overcome. So we want to help you with the challenges that you're going to be faced with the next few years. We're going to tell you what the challenges are. We're going to tell you what the changes are. We're going to tell you how to overcome them and what to do if you fall through. Tshuva is not difficult. It's not hard at all. It's not intimidating. Yet, if parents don't have the wording, don't have the mahalach, the approach, how to speak to their children, then it becomes intimidating. Mishlei Perik Yudches, Pasuk Yud Zayin. I heard this word from Rabbi Shmuel Zayin Gesund, now from Detroit. The Pasuk says, Tzadek Harishon Berivoi Uvorei Ehu V'chakarei. The one that pleads his case first at an entire usually wins the case. The next person has to prove him wrong. Our children are growing up in a world where they're going to hear a lot of information, a lot of confusing information, a lot of information that they don't know how to make sense of. The one that presents the case to the child first wins the case. If your child hears this sensitive information from the street, hears it from the not the right Torah-dig, Ashkafa-dig sources, then the adult later has a very slim chance of winning back this child. It's going to be much harder to set the child straight. Whereas at Rabbi Gershon Miller, if it's the parent, it's the adult, it's the mechanech, it's the Rabbi, it's the therapist, it's the Torah Ashkafa that is given over to the child first before he hears this information from outside sources, then he's the one that wins the case. That Talmud, that child, will have the strength to be able to stay b'kedusha, to overcome nisyonos, and know what to expect and have the tools how to overcome these challenges. Our goal is to make sure that children are prepared for life's challenges. The only way they can be prepared for it is if the adult in their life sits down with them or has a casual conversation with them and tells them, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about your life the next few years. Let me prepare you for some things, and let's open the line of communication that anytime you have a question, you're not sure how to go about something, you're not sure if what you're experiencing is normal or not, feel free to come ask. Open that line of communication. You want your child to come ask you questions. You don't have to have the answer all the time, but you have to allow the child to ask and let the child know that I will come back with an answer for you. I will do my research. I may have to ask someone else also. It is our job to be mechanech our children, to prepare them for life's challenges. Let them know these are challenges that not only you're going to be faced with, every man is faced with these challenges. Every Rav, every Gadol, every person has these challenges. And it's not difficult to overcome. And if you feel you need help, it is always okay to come over to adult, come over to your Rebbe, come over to your mashgiach, come over to your father and say, I need help in these nyanim. Open that line of communication. Allow him to ask questions. Make him feel comfortable. Normalize him. He's normal. Then he'll have an appreciation. It will be so much more meaningful when he experiences it, he experiences the adolescent changes, and he's ready to work on his nisyonos. It'll have much more meaning if he's prepared beforehand. To bring a quote, Benjamin Franklin says, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. If we don't feel comfortable having this conversation with our child, and we're not preparing our child, then you're preparing your child to fail. Who can take that achrayas? Being prepared enhances self-discipline. If someone is prepared for that Nisayan, it will enhance his self-discipline to be able to work on it, to be able to understand it, and to be able to put it on a pedestal and say that we are a Goy Kadosh, we are a Heilige nation, we are a holy nation. We have the concept of Kedusha, and our job in this world is to continuously work on growing to the next level of Kedusha. If we look into the Parsha of Arayas, Parshas Emor, right before it starts talking about Parshas Achrei. There's 4 psukim of Hagdama to the Ervis. Rabbi Shalom, Rabbi Bnei Sovartem, Ani Hashem Alekechem, Kemas Eretz Mitzrayim Asher Shaftem Bo, Lo Yisasu, Kemas Eretz Canaan Asher Yimei V'Eschem Shom Lo Yisasu, Uv'Chogeseim Lo Yiselechu, Es Mishpotei Tasu, V'Smechos Yishmu Lechzim Ani Hashem Alekechem, U'Shmartem Tzchakois Mishpotei Asher Yasem Odam V'Chai B'Am Ani Hashem. There are 4 psukim of Hagdama to the Parsha of Arayos. And then after all the Arayos that the Torah discusses, there's again another few psukim. Al tatamu b'chol eila ki b'chol eila nitmu agoyim ashinim shalech mepneichem. Where do you see that when it comes talking about a mitzvah, talking about a siyag, that there's so many psukim of a hagdara, the boundaries that HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that we need in order to be able to overcome this nisayan, the preparation that we need is in our hands. So if we sit down with our children and we follow the Torah's mahalach of preparing, then our children will have a much easier time overcoming this challenge. And this is not only benegay the challenge of erva, it's not only benegay the challenge of kedusha. Any topic that you want your child to be successful for, don't mind, my English is my second language, Yiddish is my first language. You have to prepare the child beforehand. Sit down with them, have conversation, let them know what they should be expecting the next few months, the next few years. And if there's been any trauma in the family, make sure you discuss it with a professional so they can help you through the process, whether it's your own trauma or your child's trauma. But that shouldn't be a reason why we should shy away from discussing such an important topic to our children. The more prepared our children will be, the better of a chance they will have to overcome this yayness in life. May we follow the guidelines of boundaries. May we allow our children, you give the children directives, that creates boundaries, that creates guidelines. They know how to navigate life if you let them know what are the expected boundaries. Not always will they follow all the boundaries, but at least they should know there is an expectation. And if there's an expectation, they can live up to it. And if they don't live up to it this time, hopefully the next time they'll have the kaiches to live up to their expectations. Yet we have to start the dialogue. We have to start the conversation, and we have to open those lines of communication that it's okay to talk to your parent. It's okay to talk to your child anytime you have questions in any areas. Big Talks was formed in order to be able to empower the parents with the information that's needed to have these sensitive conversations with their children. Currently, there's a toolkit out for Bacharim, a mitzvah age Bacharim. We're going to be publishing soon a toolkit for mothers of 9 to 10-year-old girls, how to be able to speak to their daughters, that were written by mechanchos and therapists, women mechanchos, who specialize in these inyanim of empowering the parents how to have these sensitive conversations and making it light, making it simple, and making it doable, giving them a mahalach to prepare their children. Any information that's needed, bigtalks.org, bigtalks.org. Get information. Currently only the boys, but in a few weeks, hopefully we'll have the girls' toolkit there as well. And with the siyata d'shmaya, with the help of giving over information to our children, not being afraid to talk to our children, we feel empowered to parent our children effectively, we will see much nachas from our children, grandchildren, our tamidim, tamidos. And again, thank you to Rabbi Goodman and his entire staff from Yedidim and Epic Families, Epic Parenting, to be able to continue to empower parents to be the most effective parents so they can shep complete simchas and nachas. Thank you so much. Kol tov.